Hey, welcome back. You're doing absolutely fantastic. So in this section, we're going to teach you something that you may not have been aware of. It's that you're always communicating. We are always communicating. We can't stop communicating. We do it in a multitude of ways, but we are always communicating. Even when you're sitting there saying nothing. This would always drive therapy clients nuts. A lot of therapy clients thought they could just sit there and say nothing throughout an entire interview. And they would be resistant. They'd just sit there with their arms folded, and they thought that they were telling you nothing. Oh no, you were telling me a ton. You were telling me that you were resistant, that you didn't want to be in treatment, that you were angry, that you were upset, that this actually worked maybe on your parents or your coworkers or somebody who's not me. This didn't work on me. I knew that it was a gambit. A gambit is basically a power ploy that you're trying to use that you figure that I can't defeat. You know, I'd go in and I'd be doing an assessment on a client, and they would just sit there and they would say nothing. But they were communicating. I could communicate back and make sure I got them to communicate. I'd say, hey, it's going to be very difficult to do your intake if you don't communicate. Can you help me out? And they were very sincere in their answer. They said nothing. They were just absolutely flat. So I would communicate to them. I'd say, I'll tell you what, given the fact that I can't do the intake, I've got a long line of people outside waiting for you. I've got your probation officer who's going to do the paperwork. And I've got the police officer that he's got a set of silver bracelets, and he's going to take you in the green and white taxi called the police car, and he's going to take you off to jail. And they've got your old orange jumpsuit. They still have one left in your size. I can see from your chart here, your name is John Michaels. Okay, but good news, they still have your old number. So instead of being John, you can go back to being 972849. You won't even have to remember a new number. So today's going to be a great day for you. So I need to know if you want to come into treatment, and I need to know in the next 10 seconds, or you and I are going to part ways, and I'm going to let the next person in. Your probation officer is not a patient man. Oh, well, I didn't say I wasn't going to talk, you know. Can't you give a guy a minute to think? All of a sudden, you get this major turnaround. But realize, people are always communicating. When somebody does something, when they don't do something, when they choose to do something, when they choose not to do something, when they're being helpful, when they're being hurtful, it doesn't matter what is going on. They're always communicating. Whether they pay attention to you, they don't pay attention to you. They get excited about what you're saying, they don't get excited about what you're saying. People cannot stop communicating. I'll bet there's a situation where you think there was no communication, but you also think there was a lot of communication. You've got a date with a girl and you say, hey, let's meet together at this restaurant at 8 o'clock. And she doesn't show up. Is that a communication? Yeah, you're thinking it is. You know, it means something. Does she hate you? Did she forget? Should I call the hospitals? I'm going to call the local hospitals, and she better be in one. What does it mean? It means something. Everything is communication. Let's take a look a little deeper. Now, here's some different ways to communicate. I don't want to belabor them. First one is facial expression. That's absolutely huge. But don't be deceived by facial expressions. Facial expressions are very consistent. They're very accurate. But I want you to know, nobody ever practiced their facial expressions in the mirror. The only person that's good at deceiving people with facial expressions is liars, because they actually will practice it in front of the mirror. But honest, sincere people can also sometimes have facial expressions that don't always match up with how they're feeling. I can remember when I was sitting in the bus at high school, I'm like, I'm finally done. I can relax for a few minutes. You know, my work day, which is being at school, is over. I'm taking the bus, but then I'm going to my job I have after school. And I'm just going to relax, and I'm like in perfect serenity, and I'm just like watching the green grass whiz by and the trees and the clouds in the sky, and I'm just kind of drifting out and looking out the window. And people are like, Paul, why are you so depressed? depressed is the best part of my day. So looking relaxed can also look depressed to another person. Doesn't mean that's what you're necessarily feeling, but it's what they're seeing and what they're interpreting. Remember, we said those aren't the same things. So next one is hand signals. I think that's a great way to communicate. Aggression is another way that people communicate. That guy just talked about. Sitting there, you know, in the interview room just folding his arms. He wanted to use aggression. I said, well, that's his style of communication. I'll match too, right? I'll use the exact same style and I'll outdo him. Why? Because he only does this once. I've done this a million times. I'm going to have better techniques than him. I've seen a lot of customers. So aggression is a form of communication. Now, these are forms of communication which are actually levels. If you do a letter or an email, and I want you to hearken back to the last lesson, 7% of communication is what? Verbal. It's the spoken word. Or what? Written word. It's the text, literally. So if you send a letter, an email, a text, they only hear the words. They only read the words. I'm sorry, they don't even hear them. They only see the words. That's 7% of the communication. That's terrible. That leaves 93% to fall on the ground and to what? You got it. Be misinterpreted. Telephone. Well, now you got the words. That's 7. You got the tonality. That's good. That's 38. Now you're up to what? I'm carrying the one, blah, 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 blah. That's 45%. Okay? 55% of the communication, okay, unless you use like FaceTime or something like that, is gone. Why? You lost the body language. The only time it's 100%, and you can still have miscommunication, but at least you got 100% of your guys on the field, you know, in this battle. It's 100% is in person. Words, tone, body language, you got it all going on. I remember my very first girlfriend, she went off to college and we started writing the letters. And we talk on the phone once in a while. And of course, when she was here, I go visit her on the weekends, we talk in person. And that's when I learned how messed up letters and telephones can be. I would send her a letter, loving, caring letter, blah, 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 love you, think the world of you, da, 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 da. And she would come back all upset, or I wouldn't hear from her for a while because she was mad about something I had said because she took it totally the wrong way. It was a little better on the phone. You know, if I sent her a letter, there was like a 90% chance I was going to get some kind of negative response because I'd write like a 2-page letter. So in somewhere in there, she was going to find something to take offense to that I'd said wrong, quote unquote, by her definition. In my mind, it sounded fine. But guilty until proven innocent. Same thing on the phone. I would be having this nice conversation on the phone, but about half the time it would go wrong. And I'm like, why? Oh my God, could I be any more nice? Could I be any more sincere? It would go wrong. You know? In person, once in a while it would go wrong, but I could immediately clean it up. And like I said, I had all my soldiers on the field. I had 100% of the communication there. I would probably win, okay? That was okay. But man, I almost completely stopped doing the letters, and I was very careful to evaluate them. Could this possibly be taken any other way before I would ever send them out? I was extra careful on the phone, and I kept the conversation short, and then did the bulk of my communication when I was there with her in person, and that made it go much, much better. So remember this in relationships, and remember this in communication with businesses. Businesses love to shoot letters, emails, texts back and forth, and they think the other person understands. That is not in evidence. Much better over the phone. You won't have the same challenges that I had because there's not as much emotional stuff going on, but everybody's an emotional animal. Everybody is actually more emotional than they are intellectual, and even though you say, oh, it's just business, they will have challenges over the phone and could take offense to anything. Remember, there's nothing people can't take offense to. Phone call was too long and you bored me. I'm offended. It was too short. What, I'm not worth your time? I'm offended. It was just right. But why'd you call me 3 times this week? You only called me once this week. I'm offended. Too much, too little. There's a million ways to go wrong, only one way to be perfect. So, lots of ways to communicate. I want to share with you some of the challenges. Now, a lot of times these communications can go absolutely perfect. You and my girlfriend, some of them went wonderful. No challenges. But we're going to teach you complete mastery to make it as good as humanly possible. Remember, you can only control your half, right? But we're going to teach you how to master that half. So, some other ways to communicate. A gift. You give a gift, you don't give a gift. That says a lot around the holidays, right? Gift is very sincere. You only do that for people you what? Like. Yeah. Creates reciprocity. These are all forms of communication. Touch is a huge one. Okay, you can see this couple, I think they may have met once or twice. But even simple touch has levels of communication. I used to show this to people. You would wave to somebody. That's one level of communication. You would shake their hand. You would do the warm hand clasp where you touch their hand, you touch their elbow, you touch their shoulder while you're doing it. You say, to hell with a handshake, bring it in, I'm going to give you a hug. But there's different kinds of hug. There's the large circular hug where, there's a foot in between you where you say, I will maintain my frame, you maintain your frame, we will now do the tango. And you're so far away from the other person. Then there's the guy one where the quick pat in the back and get out of dodge. There's the one where you get the full body hug like you give your mom. Bring it in. So, touch has a lot of different levels. Snobbing. Remember we said even when you're not communicating, you're communicating. My wife, she's Filipino. They were very poor back in the day. It was like Gilligan's Island. I mean, they literally lived in the bamboo hut. They literally cleaned their clothes out on a rock with a bar of soap out in the brook. So what did they have for fun? They could listen to the radio. They didn't have a TV. Again, it was like Gilligan's Island. They could go swimming. You could go for a walk. You could talk or you could eat. So their biggest things were talking and eating. And that's what they did. And they'd love to do them what? Together. So my wife thought the ultimate thing you could do to somebody to really hurt them. Well, she didn't want to starve me to death, so she decided she wouldn't talk to me. She'd snob me. We literally called it snobbing. Bernadette, are you snobbing me? No response. Snobbing, right? But I'm a therapist. I talk to people all day long. I talk to other therapists. I talk to clients. I talk to insurance providers. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not a big talker, all evidence to the contrary, because I'm teaching right now. But I love to have my downtime. So after a long day of 10, 12 hours of blah, 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 me or somebody else, I loved a perfectly good opportunity to A, shut the hell up, and B, have some silence. It took her about 3 days of doing this into our marriage before she realized I was actually digging it. This was not a consequence for me, it was a reward. But snobbing is definitely a communication. Posing. This is interesting. You can take it a lot of ways. Some people are always trying to stand a certain way, look a certain way, be in the right light. It can be that kind of posing. But a pose is the way that you just hold your body. You naturally do it. Everybody is posing without realizing they're posing because it's not a fake pose, it's a real pose. I stand like this, I look like this, I hold my body like this, It can be anywhere from, I always look like I was walking around with a stick up my butt, people said. Why? Well, I got a lot of curvature in my spine. So it probably does look like I'm walking like that. Slightly bow-legged. I've got an extra, one foot's a little bit shorter than the other. Nobody's perfect. Bruce Lee had the same problem. So gait, even the way I walked, the way I stood, you stand a little bit different. It has a lot to do with personality as well, but it's also communicating. Gestures are huge. This is the biggest part of the what? The body language, right? Signs. This could be anywhere from a sign on a wall. I used to have a sign on my wall that said, no bullshit. Okay, it was just like the one that you're seeing. Signs can also be things you have around the room. The room, what you choose to have in the room, what you don't have in the room. You can tell about 80% of everything you'll ever need to know about a person just by walking in around their house and looking in the various rooms. Why? because it perfectly matches who they are. And everything says something about them, good, bad, or indifferent. So signs are another way to communicate. What are some other ways? There's literally a million different ways to communicate. I want you to take some time. I want you to reflect. Ladies holding the glasses. What does that mean? Is that a communication? Yes. She looks smarter with the glasses. Does she do that on purpose, or is it because she can't see? Does she use the glasses as a prop to look smarter as she's talking? Hey, if you don't see them on me, then I look smarter when I'm talking with them, but I can also look prettier at the same time. Is that a good technique? She might be doing that consciously. She might be doing that unconsciously. See how there's a million different ways to communicate? She's communicating because she has her glasses. What if she's fumbling around because she doesn't have her glasses? That may mean she's absent-minded, at least in the area of what? Her glasses. People are always communicating. What she chose to wear. Girlfriend shows up on a date. Clothing is a form of communication. Did she wear her sexy, we're going to get to at least second base on this date outfit? Or did she wear something conservative? Slow your roll, buddy. I need to know you first. You could be serial killer, stalker. Okay? So, everything is saying something. I want you to go out for at least the next day and see how many different ways people are communicating. I want you to think about it when you're watching a TV show, when you're doing something, when you're watching people interact, when you're in an interaction. Notice that people never, ever, ever stop communicating. It's your ability to pick out the sheer number of ways that they communicate, to have this awareness and to begin to see it. And the only way you can do that is to practice. So that's your homework for today, and I'll see you in the next section.